So, thank you, Mark, for that discussion. It's great to have you on the team. Thanks for the transition. So, as Mark said, we're going to be talking about AI ops and data analytics, how artificial intelligence for IT operations and advanced data analytics can make agencies more proactive rather than being reactive throughout their product life cycles. We're going to talk about technologies like RPA, robotic process automation, and AI, and how they're helping them shift away from manual process towards IT infrastructure improvements over time. You know, I'm looking forward to the time when AI ops is the overarching theme to these sessions, not DevSecOps. You know, I think it will occur at some point, and DevSecOps is the sibling to AI ops, right? So I'm joined on this session with Colonel Bradshaw. He's Deputy Director and AI Task Force at the AI Task Force at Army Futures Command. Good morning, Colonel Bradshaw. Dave Catanoso, who's Director of Enterprise Cloud Solutions at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Good morning. Ron Thompson, who's the Chief Data Officer and Deputy Director for Digital Transformation at NASA. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning.
Matt Walker, who's Federal Sales Director at Dell Technologies. Good morning, Matt.
Hi.
So let's get started with the questions. I have a generic question for all of us to start with. You know, how are you aligning IT goals with AI, data analytics, and DevSecOps tools? And what sort of workforce cultural shifts are you seeing or encouraging to streamline use of these tools? Maybe we should start with Ron. Your microphone's on.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. So this is a pretty good story for NASA. You know, really, it's our part of our digital transformation, and we've been active in that activity for the last two years, where we've done a lot of research and methodologies in our approach. And culture and workforce and AI ML are two of our key thrust areas that we're working on. So it's really the focal point that we have right now is really identifying pockets of excellence within the organization. NASA is a very federated organization, like many. We have very disparate missions. You know, we have aeronautical mission, we have science and research, and we have human exploration. So there are our three pillars, and we have pockets of really, I would say, world-class expertise in these. So what we're doing as part of our transformation is gaining awareness of where those pockets of excellence are, and encouraging sharing and making sure we do this in a very secure fashion. Making sure we're sharing knowledge, you know, not only throughout the organization, but from best practices outside in other government agencies and commercially as well. So the culture is really that awareness that's starting with starting with data, the need for actually sharing our expertise among the different parts of the organization. So that awareness is really important. And then our skills as well. So the skills of our workforce, we're assessing where we have really strong bench strength and where we have opportunities where we need to shore that up holistically across the organization. So that's where we are, Andrew, at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Ron. You know, Colonel Bradshaw, from your perspective, you know, how are you seeing the goals and workforce shifts supporting those goals?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So I'm going to piggyback off Ron and say the military, DoD, and the Army, again, very federated, spread globally. What we've seen is, you know, as senior leaders start to adopt this technology, there's a vast space between users on the ground and actual decision makers at the top, who are in some cases making multi-million-dollar decisions on technology that will be used by the users at the lower end. So what we're trying to do inside the Army specifically is close that gap between users on the ground who understand the technology, probably a kid who is 18, 19, 20 years old, who's grown up with a screen in front of his face, his entire life. And, 50, 60-year-old general officers and senior executives who aren't necessarily in tune with the latest and greatest technology, but know that we need to move that direction. So we're taking some looks at educational advances and educational opportunities to close that gap between those two user bases.
And thank you. So David Catanoso, I notice your microphone's still off, but I wanted to ask you a question, about your role with the VA Enterprise Cloud and DevSecOps. How are you aligning with IT goals, AI and data analytics, and the DevSecOps? I can't get that word out. DevSecOps tools within the VA Enterprise Cloud.
Well, one of our main IT goals from Secretary Wilkie is to improve customer service to our veterans, and we've oriented our digital service strategy really to deliver that. And for those that don't know, the VA is the second largest federal agency. We've got over 400,000 employees. If we were a Fortune 500 business, we'd be a Fortune 10 size organization. We've got three major lines of business: healthcare, benefits, and cemetery operations. We operate the largest integrated healthcare system in the country, maybe the world, with over 170 hospitals and 1,300 clinics. We've got over 50 benefits offices nationwide and almost 150 cemeteries. So you can imagine we've got a large corporate infrastructure to support all that and tons of IT to orient, right? So DevSecOps and AI ops are things we're looking at to really deliver on that goal of best customer service we can provide our nation's veterans.
And are you seeing any workforce cultural shifts in support of that?
Of course, we have had to adopt to cloud, to DevSecOps, going from waterfall methodologies to Agile, shifting from on-prem technology to cloud technology, software as a service, a whole bunch of things happening all at once to deliver that digital strategy. So it is a challenge. Changes, is challenging.
Can you point out any specific challenges that you've faced in the workforce, in the development of that space?
I think it's just getting people up to the skill level that they need to do. I mean, and everybody oriented in the same direction. With a large organization, it can be challenging sometimes. So getting training on board, making it available to everyone, making sure people can find the time to do it, right? I mean, delivering on that mission is a full-time job, maybe more than a full-time job. And then add the COVID situation in over the last 6 months or so. And it's been challenging to find the time to get people training and to also, do the work they have to do day to day.
Ron and Colonel Bradshaw, are you finding the same challenges?
So, go ahead, Ron.
Sorry, David. I would say there are a lot of commonality within organizational challenges across any organization. I don't think that's unique. Commercially or in the federal space. But I think I like to say, Andrew, look at this not as a challenge, but as an opportunity. I think the opportunity is the case for change, the case to do something differently. And that's the why, the motivation of why you're doing that. That awareness is not just simply a communication strategy, but it's getting people behind why they must think differently, why they must operate and use DevSecOps, right? Why they have to have three parts of the organization. It used to be distinct and separate, and why they must come together. Why must we use new methodologies and abilities like RPA and AI/ML? If you look at really what's in the root of all this, it is an algorithm that tells the AI what to do. That algorithm's coded by human beings. So we have to make sure we look at this as a new tool in the toolbox, a new way of working, and then why is it needed right now in this workforce? The pandemic has forced us to work differently. I think that is true globally. Not just a particular federal organization, a particular company, a particular country, but globally we must work differently, and we must use modern ways of working differently. So that motivation we're finding is really just as important as the technology that we use and the tools and capabilities we use. That is key, that we must operate in a different manner than we have in the past.
Thank you. And Colonel Bradshaw, finding the same issues. I know that, we talked earlier a little bit about Carnegie Mellon and, with the skills shortage out there, AI engineers, DevSecOps, space is very competitive, the environment. I was just wondering what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so from the Army's perspective, I'm an operations research systems analyst. So most of us have a data or mathematical background. So I think as we saw the Army shift towards artificial intelligence and data analytics, the ORSAs in the Army were a natural fit to fill that gap. But being a small branch, we understand that we can't fill that entire gap. So now what we're trying to do is build that groundswell of people who are comfortable with the technology, who understand the technology, and can start to look inside their own organizations at where they can apply AI and ML and RPA to make life easier, right? So we want the computers to do the mundane things that we don't want people to do, or the things that computers are good at. Classification is one, right? So it's really looking across the branches in the Army, and that's another issue we have. Is every officer or enlisted member comes in the Army is assigned a branch. A specific job or skill set that they have. So now we're trying to layer on top of that the AI and the ML capabilities that we want them to bring out into the workforce. So what we've done is we've gone out and grabbed some of the best and brightest in the Army, brought them to Carnegie Mellon. Some are in master's programs, some are in certification programs, and we're starting to build a PhD program too. So we see multiple levels and multiple avenues of approach, but the intent is really for us to build ambassadors that we can send out to the rest of the Army to help build that understanding and underpinning for later on. It's easy to talk about AI and ML, and you see magic arrows on charts, how data flows between different aspects. And what I always tell people is, hey, look at the magic arrows, because that's where all the business really happens, is moving that data, understanding how we leverage that data. And what we're trying to do is teach people it's not as easy as just sprinkling AI on every problem. You've really got to understand where the data comes from, the provenance of the data, and then how you can make that data usable for actual AI and ML.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's an interesting problem. I'm glad to see you looking outside of the federal space and engaging, academia. And one of the things we do at Government CIO is try and bring in those different perspectives to the federal space. I think that's why I got employed. I've got that European thing going on. I did some of the things that federal agencies over here had done in Europe before, and vice versa. It's good to exchange ideas. And I wanted to bring in Matt now. Matt's got the industry perspective, which I think is always really important to find out what's going on and out in the private sector and what those organizations are doing to help infuse those ideas into the federal space. So Matt, what are you guys doing over at Dell to support these initiatives?
Yeah, thanks. We're doing a lot when it comes to AI and ML. It's a top initiative for Dell. We put a lot of investment, a lot of time, research and development into it. We've got AI labs and proof of concepts across the industries, and we've developed infrastructure and software stacks that'll allow our users to quickly deploy and kind of decrease that upfront stand-up time for these types of solutions. We have AI-ready solutions. But when you look at Dell and what we're doing internally and how we're using AI to help you're talking about cultural change and kind of how things internally are shifting. One of the great use cases we've implemented here at the company is it's a phone home tech support capability, primarily more on our consumer grade side, but it's empowering the use of AI to identify hard drive failures prior to failure. So notifying a tech support agent to dispatch a tech support on site if needed, a hard drive preemptively before that drive fails. And so we're we're doing this in thousands of cases where historically this would require a phone call in, the potential loss of data for our customer, and now you're taking a 10-step process down to less than 5. It's a customer satisfaction issue that we're solving there, and we're preemptively using AI to identify these issues ahead of time. So that's just one example internally that we're using, but it's a driving force for us. We're doing a lot of use cases, as I said, with industry around AI and ML, and we see it as one of our top priorities.
Mm-hmm. What are the I guess the challenges that you're seeing with introducing AI in those environments?
Challenges? I think it's it's identifying the proper use cases. I think Colonel Bradshaw mentioned it, right? We've got an influx of data these days, and enterprise data, mission data, and trying to identify how to best rationalize that and then apply AI to it. It's not a one-size-fits-all, so it's let's strategically look at this and let's see what the mission problem is that we're trying to solve, and then let's come up with a solution that's going to address that. I think it's easy to throw around the term a lot, kind of like virtualization was previously, and then cloud, now AI, ML. We got to make sure we're strategically looking at the problem we're trying to solve and then applying it properly.
Mm-hmm. Is there one success story that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some things that we're working on currently with DHS, for example, around trying to extract and analyze visualizing data from some past performance government system information, and then automatic screening systems for weapons is another thing we're doing around DHS. And you look at today what we're in with a lot of us working from home. You've got agencies like the TSA that are working in office all day, right, at the airports, and so using and us trying to work with them on implementing AI and ML solutions to help quickly and accurately screen passenger bags. Some of those types of things are areas in the civilian space that are working well with us in the federal government.
Yeah. No, I think that we've touched on one of the big problems, like the amount of data that's out there and being streamed at devices, at humans today. We really need AI to remove the noise, identify the meaningful outliers that are in there, and and take actionable actions based on those, automatically, and maybe infusing those into established workflows is the way to become more productive in somewhere like the TSA environment. Ron, a question for you, moving back to DevSecOps a little bit. I know that you worked at the VA prior to moving over to NASA. I was interested in, what did you learn from that role? What takeaways did you take over to NASA in your new role?
Well, at the VA, I was Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for IT, so essentially the Deputy CIO of the agency. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago now. And we had the concept of setting up that DevSecOps. So that was under Bill James was there at the time. We brought him to do that. And we saw the opportunity to be more streamlined in how that work was done. Before, it was in separate stovepipes. Operations and development and security was in separate parts of the OIT. So coming up with that design and it's really nice. I'm still obviously talking to folks that are still in the VA, still seeing how that's matured and advanced to where it is right now. I think at the time it was very new. The concept was very new of bringing the organizations together and one belly button, so to speak, that's accountable for that within the OIT shop, besides the CIO and deputy CIO. So that's worked quite well. I think obviously other parts of government have adopted to this, and it has been a successful model to follow for other parts of the organization. If you look back at what the concept that we had with this is to really make sure the veteran was able to be serviced. And we mentioned this, David mentioned this early, Secretary Wilkie's priority of servicing the veteran. It really speeds the market. So that's sort of the problem we were fixing at the time is, the speed to market for the solutions, the services that the veteran was receiving. So again, that's really applicable to any organization, right? So how do you do that in the same secure manner that you need to do, the same standards that you need to operate within, but how do you do that more timely? And that was sort of the concept and the ethos behind doing it. And industry obviously was well ahead of government at the time to actually collapsing these functions down within one organization. So it is refreshing to see, David, and hearing the progress many years later about the advancements and the ability to field more quickly is really the advantage to the mission. You made it.
Sorry. Leading on from that question, how's that impacted NASA's software development, delivery system?
So we're adopting the same model here, and I'll give you a really good example of where we use sort of a real mission example of what we experienced with NASA during the pandemic. Early on, we did not have awareness of the virus's impact to our local centers. So we quickly brought in a team across the OCIO and developed a view into the data, the hospital data. We worked with other federal agencies at the time, HHS and CDC, to make sure we were getting normalized data. So back to David's point earlier is that you need data that's viable, that's accurate, that's meaningful. So we were able to work across the federal government through the CDO Council to show our medical community what was going on at the time and how the pandemic was affecting our localized area. Now, before that, we were actually doing this work on paper, and we actually stood up one of the first contact tracing applications across the federal space. So one of our team members, Allison Wolf, was just awarded an award across government for this work. So she was just recognized this week. So great work, Allison. But they were able to put a contact tracing app that was, again, done on paper early in the pandemic. And now that we see the case rates rising in where we are as a nation, that is even more critical. And then we're going to have our vaccine, so our vaccine distribution for the agency, we're going to track the same way. Matter of fact, we were just having conversations with our CIO this morning, and then our chief medical officer this morning about tracking vaccines and how we distribute it. So you can see it's a real world example using DevSecOps in a way to field IT solutions quicker that, quite frankly, were just done on paper and not as accurate as it should be. And that's our first priority, Andrew, is really protecting our people in NASA. So.
Yeah. So if you had the ability to introduce AI and machine learning as
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We have so not only with the pandemic exercises, but we have work around resume analysis, our intelligent global search. So we have really good heliophysics. So this is really the mission side of NASA, studying the sun. So we're bringing in AI methodology to do this. And then, really looking at ethical use of AI. So this is something that the DoD is really in advance. That, they did the rules of war and put this in place. So we're really looking at the ethical use of AI as well as bias. So how do we ensure that we're doing this in a secure fashion that we tease out all the biases possible out there? So it is a very exciting time to be using these tools and capabilities differently than we have in the past, and we are really making advancements throughout the agency in this space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Ron. The question for you, Colonel Bradshaw, getting the proper personnel to successfully create, deploy, and maintain IA is always a challenge. What are Army Futures Command trying to do to overcome this with programs like the Army AI Scholars program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have really four different levels of personnel that we are focused on. One is the user level, right? So those are people that come in who bring their own skills with them. So most of it's stuff they've learned at home, but they're very comfortable with coding, very comfortable with artificial intelligence and the use of analytics and computers to do their work. So we see those people as building probably homegrown solutions. Not that I would say that that's the best answer, but those are the kids that are tinkering around in the back room because they're tired of filling out a form. They're building their own solution to fill that form in and auto-generate it potentially. So we see them as one level of user, and then we have AI scholars and AI technicians, which we are calling cloud technicians. So we're really focused on that cloud native capability. So if you've worked any time in government or DoD, you understand that most of our technology, most of our capabilities are not cloud native. They are going to take some serious uplift to get them to that level of capability. So we've started to build AI cloud technicians that will help us with that provisioning of equipment, building of pipelines, and the entire resourcing of that cloud capability. So we have users, we have technicians, and then above that, I would say we have our AI scholars, and those are the folks that we are really focused on the data science side of the house and the data engineering side of the house. So those are the folks that are actually building the algorithms, they're building the databases, they're manipulating the data and munging that data into a useful format so we can actually run AI on top of that data. And then I would say the last one is the executive level, right? So those are the leaders that we see, again, making those multi-million-dollar decisions on systems that they may or may not ever touch, but they definitely have influence over those systems. So we're trying to build an executive level leadership course. In fact, we're running a course right now, a pilot course with Carnegie Mellon, that is allowing 2- and 3-star generals and senior executives to understand what it takes to actually be cloud native. What does it take to actually build algorithms that run and function? And then how do you build your manpower around those and organize your manpower around those functions so that you can effectively and efficiently use analytics to your advantage?
So likewise, what are some of the best practices you realized in training employees in AI?
So I would say you've got to be you can't be averse to someone failing. So as we bring folks into the Army, we pick them based on the skill set that they bring with them. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily AI or ML proficient. But what we try to do is go out and find those people based on their interest. Again, probably a user in a back room that someone has said, hey, this kid is really technical. We should use him in a different fashion. So we reach out, we try and grab those folks from organizations that they think are most technically capable. And then we run them. The technician course is roughly a 14-week course through Carnegie Mellon in partnership with them. And out of that, they come back with several certifications. So they have an Azure Cloud certification and some Microsoft certifications that they bring back with them. And then as far as the scholars go, again, we're reaching out to the big branches in the Army. So your infantry, your marine, or your air defense, your artillery, those branches, pulling in what they think are their most technical folks, training them over a year to really get them in tune with the algorithm development and the data management on the back end.
Thank you. This may be a question to you all. and may end up being a question for Matt. I was going to ask, what infrastructure capabilities and engagement with industry or academic partners do you need to be successful? Maybe we'll start with, Colonel Brassey, you've talked about academia, but how about industry?
Yeah, so we currently reach out across multiple companies. Some of our thrust areas. One of our thrust areas is automated threat recognition. So how do you autonomously move a vehicle or a robot down a road to identify potential threats? We are very, very closely partnered with multiple industrial or industry partners on that one, in partnership with Carnegie Mellon. So they're doing some of the AI while the industry partners are building out the robots. We're also building a data science platform that allows us to run from soup to nuts the entire AI and data analytics platform. So data at inception point all the way through data visualization and decision making. So we're partnered with industry on that one also, basically sitting side by side with their coders to help them on the development side, which is new for DoD. Typically we pay a contractor or pay someone to do the development for us, and then 6 months later they come back and say, here's your product. What we found that works better is partnering with them along the way. So take some of our technologically focused personnel, put them side by side with a contractor so they can code in stride with them and make adjustments as needed. We find that those products typically work better in the end and provide a better solution for us because we're able to right the ship, for lack of a better term, along the way.
So Andrew, I'll just weigh in on our aspect of partnering commercially. We have a resupply mission going up Saturday with one of our commercial partners, and that partnership is extremely important for us to to rely on how we launch our craft now from U.S. soil for the first time in over 10 years. So how we're really doing this is looking at how we collaborate, looking at how we remove the barriers, organizational barriers that we have. Being a federal organization, we have very strict rules, what can come in and out. So look how we exchange engineering drawings and how we exchange our operational data and how we launch. It is a really big success story with the folks down in Kennedy are doing right now, launching, commercial craft through, we haven't, even during the pandemic, we really have met, the major milestones pretty much spot on, and still launching and still meeting the mission that we have to do. So what does this mean, for AI and how we work together? I think we're taking the conventional boundaries and looking at it in a different way and making sure we can collaborate, making sure we can exchange ideas electronically, digitally native, and work in a different manner right now. So that is really crucial for us, crucial for NASA's future to work in this way. And that partnership, that commercial crew partnership, is really essential for how we need to work. So really like what I'm hearing, what the Army's doing on some things. It's really, we get as much of these panels hearing what others are doing and exchanging ideas as I'm sure others that are listening to us do. So I really appreciate and want to learn more about how folks are doing this. But for NASA, that is a critical element in how we work, that commercial partnership.
Yeah, thanks.
We're doing the same thing at VA. We're working very closely with our partners, whether it's on the software development side or with our tool vendors like Science Logic, Dynatrace, ServiceNow, working to integrate, pairing up contractors with our own staff personnel to really share knowledge and get expertise quickly in place. We, even on the hardware and on-prem side, we expanded our telework capacity as part of the COVID effort, rapidly increasing our on-prem capacity in conjunction with our cloud to be able to triple or almost quadruple our telework capacity for the COVID response. And we did that as part of Ron mentioned with our DevSecOps effort that started when he was here. It's really matured. We managed to do that in a matter of weeks and maybe months, where it would have taken years potentially before. So it's really an advanced capability that we're building across the board, whether it's, as I said, software, hardware. Everything that we're doing is really maturing that way. And partnering with our commercial partners has been key.
Yeah, I think that's a really impressive story, David. The scaling up of all the telework. You're well positioned with the telemedicine type capabilities you have within the medical community, but I hear there are hundreds of thousands of additional users coming online over that early days.
It really is. We're now doing some days more telemedicine consults than we are on-prem consults, based on the capacity we built out as part of COVID. That was in addition to the telework. We launched our Care 2 environment, was doubled our telehealth capability in a matter of months by expanding into our Amazon cloud with our VAEC. So it was a huge effort to push, and we also increased our on-prem capacity in parallel to that. So it was an amazing surge that we put together, and it took everybody really working together as a team, both VA staff, contractors, and industry partners to do that.
Yeah, I think there's incredible things you can do for the VA in your capacity. I came from the image processing domain in medical imaging, and I ended up, to Matt's point, working in the TSA, looking for bombs in bags instead of blood on the brain. But all the technologies are very similar. They need a huge amount of compute power, and they need a lot of data in order to learn and get better. And AI is dependent on that. But David, when you bring the compute power to the image archive, Vista Imaging in the VA, there's amazing things we can do with AI to understand the trends in tumor development and whatnot.
Yeah, we've got a lot of teams working across our operational space to look at things like that and other things to use machine learning and AI ops for just incident response, for example, or reducing our mean time to resolution and be able to deliver service faster or triage incidents when they occur from an IT standpoint to rapidly resolve them and get things back in service. It's been a real big push from our senior leadership to really put that enterprise approach from monitoring to incident management to triage and have a consistent message from our executive ranks all the way down to our IT personnel on the tip of the spear.
Mm-hmm. In terms of AI ops and data analytics, what is the major success story that you've had? You mentioned Science Logic earlier as an industry partner. I imagine that they've had some early successes that you can talk about.
Well, sure. We started over a year ago with a proof of value with Science Logic, which has now grown into a full-blown implementation, and we're really taking a kind of build the foundation and then crawl, walk, run. So right now we're focused on getting an enterprise grade installation in place and working with our ServiceNow team and others to build and enrich our CMDB so we get the data right up front, because really we don't want to do a lot of rework by charging out and maybe getting it wrong the first time. We're trying to make sure we have a good data foundation in place, and then we're going to start building on that initially with incident and integration and enterprise monitoring, and then going beyond that with maybe automated response and diagnostics, and then maybe behavioral correlation with the Science Logic tool. So and really we have a lot of other tools in our environment. We're, as large as we are, we have the benefit of having a lot of great vendors we're working with, and using Science Logic as that glue to integrate all those together with APIs is going to be fantastic capability as we build it out over the next year or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good luck with CMDBs. I know that they're always a challenge. So from the Dell perspective, what do you think you can do to help these agencies?
I think from our perspective, we can bring the industry knowledge and all the research that we put into AI and ML and AI ops framework. We've got a lot of smart folks. We've got a lot of use cases that we can bring and help you design something that's gonna work in your environment. I did want to touch on, one of the things you talk about partnership. The White House launched a COVID-19 high performance computing consortium back when COVID launched or came out. Dell became immediately involved in that, and TAC, who's one of our largest customers, the Texas Advanced Computing Center here in Austin, Texas, is a big player in that. So we've been extremely supportive of that supercomputer and what we can do to help with the modeling and some of the things that they're trying to simulate and drive on. So just an example of how we're partnering and try to help in the greater effort there. I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. I can say from experience, I've seen some huge advantages in the government space and the private sector from collaboration. So it's, I'm a huge advocate of these meetings and getting together afterwards, industry forums to advance our mission. We're all working towards the same aim ultimately. So we're out of time. It's my job now to thank everybody for the panel. It's been great conversations. And I'm going to pass over to Mike Hoffman, who's going to close up.